Hey, what's up, everybody? It's been a minute since we've done a breakdown. I think last Tuesday was the last one. So things have been a little crazy for me on the work front, and had a couple times where I was going to jump in with a guest, and it just didn't work out. So it has been less, but still putting in work a lot of days. And so when I get the chance, I definitely want to keep jumping in here and giving you the best information I can in terms of breaking down these games. So one thing I do want to say before we jump into the games for today is I'm still doing the work that I was doing before in terms of looking at all the data and numbers, trying to solve the puzzle and figure out what the key pieces are in these different matchups. At the same time, maybe it's the time of the season, maybe it's just kind of growing as a capper, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of both. I'm realizing how much of this is also trying to figure out whether it's a good spot for certain teams or not, like if they're likely to come out and give a good effort. And I know that's a very inexact science, and I still am relying on the data a lot, but I've just been a lot more successful since I've started trying to think through that, think through the specific matchups in addition to just the data. So probably throw a little bit more of that in, and that's the kind of stuff where there's probably a lot more room for debate. Can't really debate what a team's offensive rating is in the last 10 games, but you can debate whether it's going to be a letdown spot after coming off a big win or something like that. So look forward to hearing interaction as we go. I would love your thoughts. Am I right? Am I wrong? What are you seeing for these different games? Comment on Twitter, on YouTube, whatever. Yeah, would love to hear that. All right, that said, let's jump through these games. We got a relatively big slate, and excuse my cough when that comes. I'm still getting over that a little bit. Not doing too bad, so hopefully we won't have too much of that as we go through the breakdown today. All right, this is a breakdown from Monday, March 21st. And first up, we have the Lakers at the Cavs, Cleveland -5 and a 227 total. Now, big picture, the Lakers are just a fade team for me anymore. This season is shit for them pretty much. I suppose they can still hope Anthony Davis comes back, and that gives them something at some point. Obviously, it's been fun watching LeBron go off at times, and I've said this before, I do feel like to some extent the question is trying to cap when LeBron's going to score 50. I would say going up against his old team in Cleveland is a game where he might get up for it. So I think this is one where that has to be in play, that LeBron could really have a big game. In terms of the numbers, the Lakers, they've scored like between 95 and 110 against decent defenses here in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So about what you expect, mediocre offense. Their last 14 away from home, their offensive rating has been a little bit higher. So it's been 108.3 at home and 112.1 away. Defensive rating has been 110.4 at home, though, and 124.6 away. So their defense is what's been really pretty atrocious over the last 14 games. Also, in their last 2 back-to-backs, their defensive rating has been 118.7. They are on a back-to-back here tonight. So not necessarily a great spot for them, but in particular, not a great spot defensively. On the other side, Cleveland, we know about their injury issues. They haven't been scoring great over their last 10. They've had 2 games where they didn't even make it to 100. 4 games where they were between 101 and 110, and they had 2 out of the 10, where they got 220 or better. So obviously they pop off here and there, and the Lakers are a team that you can go off again against offensively, but it hasn't been consistent offensive production. On the defensive side, not necessarily the Cleveland that we've thought of earlier in the year as a strong defensive team. Only 1 of the last 10 have they held an opponent under 100 points. 3 of the last 10 they've allowed 120 plus. Also, on 1 day of rest in their last 14 games, their their offensive rating has been 115.2. Yeah, 115.2, and defensive rating has been 116.4. So not real great. A lot there that says to me this is a game where neither defense is likely to go off, I guess. I also do think this is a game where we do have to look at the potential that LeBron has a big game. And when LeBron has had big games, they've stayed in games and even won them. So I haven't jumped in on this game yet. I'm not sure if I will, but I would grade this out as fairly close to a pick'em, maybe Cleveland by 1 or 2. So with a spread of -5, I do see a tiny bit of value there on the Lakers, but I'm just not betting the Lakers much these days. And I line this as about a 228 total, so I don't see much value there for me personally. Next up, we have the Pelicans at the Hornets. Charlotte -6, 234.5 total. I think Brandon Ingram should still be out for this one. He was listed as a game time decision earlier on, but now it says that he's out, and that definitely makes a difference. I think the Pelicans are a really strong team when they're at full health, but when they're not, they're not bad. I mean, they're okay still, but they're mediocre. The Pelicans are on a back-to-back where they're 5-7 against the spread on the year. These two teams did play just a little bit ago on March 11th, and Charlotte won 142-120. So we had a massively high-scoring game in that one. The Pelicans have scored well in 6 out of their last 10. They've been over 120, and then they had other games at 117, 115, 111, and then just one all the way down at 102. So the Pelicans have been scoring the basketball. Their defense has been okay. I guess kind of up and down. Like they have a few games out of their last 10 where they didn't even allow 100, but in their last 4, it's been 124, 132, 142, and 131. So really not good. In their last 14 away from home, their offensive rating has been a little bit lower, 115.7, than it has been at home. And their defensive rating has been better, though, 115.8 at home and 107.2 on the road. So their defense has been more solid on the road than it has been at home. Their last 5 on back-to-backs, which they're on this one, they haven't scored much. 102, 109, 111, 97, 107. So we'll have to see because they've been scoring well overall, but not well in back-to-backs. So I'm not sure what that'll mean for tonight. Charlotte has been playing better. In their last 10, 8 out of the last 10, they've been over 115, and in 5 of those, they were over 120. So they've been scoring the ball well here recently, and the Pelicans, like I said, their defense has been up and down, but not good in the last 4, and they are coming in on a back-to-back. Charlotte's offensive rating at home in their last 14 is 120.3, so really solid. Defensive rating 113.7, so also not terrible. And then in their last 14 on one day of rest, 119.6 offensive rating and 109.8 defensive rating. So I like the Pelicans. That's no secret. And I generally don't really like Charlotte that much. But this goes back to what I said earlier of trying to have a feel for where teams are at and what they're going to be like coming into a particular game. I think the Pelicans coming in here on a back-to-back and Charlotte playing well recently, I have to give the edge to Charlotte in this one. Now, the spread is 6. I said 119, 111 Charlotte, so that would put us at -8. There's not enough for me there to have bet it yet, so I haven't bet it yet. And a total of 230. So I've said before, I don't love to take the under on Hornets games, especially when they're playing the Pelicans. I don't love that. So I'll probably stay away from the total in this one. Oh, everybody's favorite, the Blazers at the Piston. This line all the way up to -9. I believe it was Detroit -7 this morning, and I really thought about jumping on that, and apparently I should have. Because now we're up to -9 with a 222 total. I think Jeremy Grant's going to be out for this one. And I did see that Bledsoe and Simmons were listed as game time decisions. Let's see if we have any update on that. It looks like they're both going to be out. So, yeah, that is probably the reason that this line moved up to 9, because the Blazers have been absolutely freaking atrocious with their current roster. I would not bet them for anything. And I know they've covered the spread a couple times. So I get that. But there's no way I'm putting money on Portland. What I will actually consider doing here, now that I know those guys are out for Portland, done this numerous times with them, is I will probably bet the Blazers team total under and the Pistons team total over. The Pistons, I'm a little hesitant just because the Pistons haven't necessarily scored really well recently. They did have that one game against Orlando with 134, but generally they've been around 102 to 111. But this Portland defense is just so bad. They've given up 118 plus in every single game since the All-Star break, and most of them have been well north of 120. So this is just a team that can't stop anyone. And 5 of their last 10, they've scored under 100. Yes, they did have 3 where they scored over 120. So it's been really high or really low, but a lot more low than high. So the Pistons have been playing well. I think the Pistons should win this game handily, but rather than taking the -9, I'd rather play those two team totals, hoping to get both of them. But really hoping that I at least get one, even if it ends up being, more of a 5 to 7 point game. But I can definitely see Detroit blowing out the Blazers here. They're pretty terrible. Probably worst team, not probably. I think they are the worst team in the league with the current roster construction. Next, we have the Heat at the 76ers. Miami now -4.5 and a total of 215. This game changed a ton when Embiid got ruled out. I got on Miami +2 last night. I actually thought it was a good spot for Miami anyway, with how they've been playing. And then the 76ers, I think, not playing quite as well. With Embiid out, that obviously moves things. You can see it swung at 6.5 points in terms of the spread. Miami's coming in on 2 days of rest where they're 8-5 against the spread this year, and Philadelphia is on a back-to-back. They are 3-5 against the spread on a back-to-back. So I already thought that it's not necessarily a great spot for Philadelphia here. Philadelphia's had a tough schedule lately, which makes me want to take the results with a grain of salt because they played Toronto, Dallas, Cleveland, Denver, Brooklyn, Miami, Cleveland. They did have Orlando and Chicago thrown in, but that's a tough schedule. But they've only been scoring around 110 the majority of the time. And when they first got Harden, they came out of the box quick, scoring over 120 3 or 4 games in a row. Seems to have backed off some, and it is tough competition, but Miami's tough competition. They have a good defense, and I think that kind of stretch could wear Philadelphia down some. I think sitting Embiid tonight is probably not a great sign for how this team comes out and plays. The only thing you could say for Philadelphia is they have been better at home over their last 14 games. Their offensive rating has been 4 points worse, but their defensive rating has been 7 points better. But man, in their last 2 on a back-to-back, 101 offensive rating and 112.7 defensive rating, so not very good. With Embiid sitting here, I think this is like a 112 to 102 kind of game. So I would stay away from the total because I have it pretty close there. But even at Miami 4.5, if I was betting it right now, I would consider it. Obviously, it's hard to say because losing that much value from +2 to -4.5, it's a hard pill to swallow and still take it. Maybe watch this one live. See if you can get down to where Miami's money line is even and think about jumping on it there. They don't always start out the hottest. So that would be something to consider if you do still want to get in on Miami here. Next up, we have the Jazz at the Nets. Utah -1.5, 229 total. I got to be honest, I don't totally understand the spread on this one. It just makes me wonder. Bogdanovich got ruled out, which I think is a big deal for their offense because Mike Conley is not a phenomenal offensive player, and this basically whittles down the offense to Conley and Mitchell, maybe Gobert a little bit. But you know what? The Nets have hung around inside now. Having Drummond and Claxton is a pretty good combination. And I'm not saying they're going to dominate Gobert or anything, but I don't think they're at as massive a disadvantage as the Nets team used to be. Kevin Durant has been playing great. I like this roster more now with Steph Curry. Brown's still a decent player. Dragic did get ruled out. I think he's ruled out for tonight. So, yeah, that doesn't help him. But I don't feel like he's just make or break. So I really think this is maybe a pick 'em, or I would even lean toward Brooklyn a little bit. The one thing I will say is that obviously without Kyrie, the offense isn't as good. Brooklyn hasn't scored more than 111 at home since the All-Star break, except when they played Portland. But their defense has been decent. They've held teams other than one game at 123 to 113 or less. So I see this playing out as a really close game. I actually took Brooklyn at -110. Now you can get plus money on Brooklyn's money line. I think that's not a bad look at all. I mean, if anything, I would lean 55 to 60% Brooklyn in this spot, actually. They really need to keep winning. And Utah does a little bit. My Timberwolves are actually sneaking up on them, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I just think this is a spot where Brooklyn needs to keep winning, and I don't think this Utah team is actually all that phenomenal. So at plus money, I like that Brooklyn money line. And if I hadn't taken it already, I probably would. In terms of the total, again, I think it's about where I would put it. Well, actually, 20, yeah. I had it at 226. Not enough to get me excited. All right. Celtics -14.5 at the Thunder, 215.5 total. Shea may be out here. Let me see if there's any updates on that. Looks like he's going to play now. So you do get Shea, and obviously we know Shea can do Shea things, but The reality is that if the Celtics show up and want to play, they will destroy this team. Now, they are on a back to back, so I could see this being a little bit of a letdown spot for them just because they come in knowing they're playing a team that's so inferior to them that they honestly can probably coast for the first 3.5 quarters of the game and still win it at the end. So, the other thing that could happen is they go up by 30, and by the end of the third quarter, all their starters are out and it's the backups. And then can the Thunder come back and get that backdoor cover? Those are the things you're concerned about if you want to take this spread. But there's no doubt at this point that Boston is just a much, much, much superior team to the Thunder. Not a hot take. Everybody knows that, right? Boston has had a lot of time off lately, so that would make me think less that they'd be really pushing to rest anybody here. They've had 2 days off 3 times in their last 9 games. They've scored 120 plus in 4 out of their last 10 games and 110 to 119 in 3 of 10. So their offense has been humming and their defense has just been filthy. They've played an okay schedule and they've given up under 100 4 times in their last 8 games. The most they've given up is 107. They're just not letting teams score, and the Thunder don't score anyway. So this is an absolutely terrible spot for the Thunder. In addition, as if we needed any more ammunition, Boston's been way better on the road in their last 14. Offensive rating of 116.1 at home, already good, but 125.5 on the road, just crushing it. And then defensive rating of 110.1 at home, pretty good, 106.1 on the road. I mean, this is just a hot team playing in about the best possible situation for them against a terrible team. The Thunder, on the other hand, their scoring's been up and down. They've been under 105 points in 4 of their last 10, but over 115 in 5 of their last 10. They held, kicking my camera. Sorry about that. They gave up 90 in the last game to Orlando. That's just an outlier. Before that, they had 6 straight games where they gave up 120 plus. And Oklahoma City's been worse at home over their last 14. Their defensive rating has been 124.7. Terrible. Like, I'm throwing up in my mouth here. So, I mean, this is one of those spots where, like, the logic says, it should be a letdown for Boston. The numbers are good, but the spread is wide. And I haven't bet the spread, but I did the same thing again. I bet Boston's team total over and Oklahoma City's team total under. If Boston comes out with any kind of effort here, I lined this at Boston 123, Oklahoma City 101, and I felt like that was being generous to the Thunder, who suck. So give me Boston here, even though I don't bet spreads over 10, but I did take the 2 team totals, Boston over, Thunder under, and I'm actually thinking about adding more. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that one. All right. Raptors at the Bulls. This is another one where I don't understand the line. The Bulls are -4 and the total is 221. I think the Raptors should be favored here flat out. Chicago is a team that I loved earlier in the year. I still think they have potential, but they've been playing like absolute trash for the last 2 weeks, and they don't have any answers right now. Caruso came back. It hasn't really helped them. They're allowing a lot of points. They're not scoring. They're 3-5 against the spread on 2 days of rest, which is what they're coming in here. Toronto is 10-5 on back-to-backs against the spread. It's a back-to-back for them. I mean, so Chicago, over their last 10, against defenses that could be considered decent, listen to how much they've scored. 102, 110, that's their high, 110, 101, 106, 99. Just not scoring. And then they're allowing a ton, over 115 in 6 out of their last 10 and over 120 in 4 out of the last 10. They did hold a team under 100 once. So this is just a Chicago team not playing well. It's a Toronto team that is a little bit more on the positive side right now. This is a team I feel like that goes back and forth from positive to negative for a week to 2 weeks at a time. And even though their last game wasn't great, they didn't have Fred VanVleet. He'll be back tonight. That's going to help them on offense. The Bulls don't play any defense. I think I have this 117-106 Toronto. If I was the kind of person that did 10-unit max bomb plays or whatever, I would probably do it here. Toronto +4 Toronto money line. I can't understand this line. So usually when that happens, it means I'm an idiot in some way and there's something I'm not seeing. And I get trapped into a line that looks too good to be true, and lines that look too good to be true are generally too good to be true, which is why I don't do 10-unit bombs. If you look on my bet stamp, you'll see that I have a bet on there for Chicago -4.5. It's because I hit the wrong button today, like a freaking idiot. So I ended up going and putting 2 units on the Raptors because that is the side that I'm on. And I am considering adding more on this one as well. I don't understand this one. I also have a unit on Toronto's team total over. I think it's only at like 111. And I have them at 117 tonight. So seems like a good spot to me. We'll find out. Wizards at the Rockets, Washington -5. 234 total. This game's gross. I mean, who gives a shit about the Wizards or the Rockets, honestly, at this point? I mean, these teams are pretty much impossible to know what to do with them, and I don't know that anyone cares to. A few things, if you care to know, Houston's on a back-to-back. They're 2-8-1 against the spread, so that doesn't bode well for them. Washington's scoring has been meh. They're like 110 to 115 a lot of the time, but they've given up 120 or more in 5 out of their last 10. Houston can't score really against anybody. Against bad defenses, they have scored close to 120. Maybe Washington's a bad defense. Who knows? But the big thing is that Houston gives up tons of points, 120 or more in 6 of their last 10 games. Their last 3 games on back-to-backs, their defensive rating has been 125.6, which is total dog shit. So I don't know. If you want to bet something here, if you're that degenerate, I would lean to the Washington side, but I would absolutely stay away from this game. This is a train wreck, and I wouldn't watch it and I wouldn't bet on it. All right, last one up. Best for last here. I kind of mean that too, actually. I mean, I'm a Timberwolves fan, so I'm always going to say that, but this is a hot matchup right now. The Timberwolves have been on fire, beating bad teams, beating good teams, getting, high energy, good, positive, strong energy, good team dynamics. Going to get up against the Mavs, who have been one of the best teams the second half of the season, though I would contend that they might be tailing off just a tad. Now, the big thing in this one is Cat is a game-time decision. It looks probable for him, and I think he's going to try to go because they're down to where they're only a game and a half back Dallas for the number 5 seed and 3.5 back of Utah for the division. So I think Minnesota's going to want to win every game they can right now. So I would be surprised if Cat doesn't go. And I think this line says that he's playing. I think this is Dallas -5+ if Cat was out. Minnesota's offense has been absolutely bananas lately. Last 10, they've been over 120 in 8 out of 10 games. I mean, come on. That's amazing. Over 120 in 8 out of 10 and over 130 in 5 out of 10. Their offense is on fire, and their defense has been okay. They've held teams under 120 in 8 out of 10, which doesn't sound great, but when you're scoring 120 plus every game, it's good enough. And they've held teams under 110 in 5 out of their last 10. So half the time they're holding teams under 110. Their last 14, they've been better away from home on offense with an offensive rating of 123. Worse on defense, but still a defensive rating of 111.7. Dallas here is home after a 5-game road trip, and offensively, they haven't been great in their last 10. 3 of their games were 77, 95, and 101. They only have 1 game over 120 points. And granted, we think of Dallas as a defensive team, and rightly so, but they've been given up a little bit more than they were. They haven't been the lockdown defense that they were for a stretch earlier in the season. Again, I think this is a game they're both going to want to win, but the Timberwolves are hot right now. And in some ways, I could see Dallas coming out and playing hard, playing well because of how some of their games have gone recently. But if Cat plays, I'm going to go Minnesota here. I like Toronto at plus money on the money line today, and I like the Timberwolves at plus money on the money line. Of course, we always say that with any bet. Yes, of course, Dallas can win. Dallas could even blow them out. But I think Minnesota puts up 115 to 120 even against a good defense in Dallas. And if they do that, that puts a ton of pressure on Dallas's offense to score enough to be able to win this game. So this is one I could see going to overtime as well. So I like the Timberwolves, but I also am slightly interested in the over. I line this game around 230, but I think both teams have the capacity. I put 119, 111. I can also see like 125, 119-ish. With those, that's not the same math. 117, whatever. You get the point. Like, if anything, I think this game's higher scoring, not lower. And it could go to overtime, which helps you push to an over as well. So I don't hate the over in this game. So just to recap, in case you haven't been with me for the whole thing, some of the bets that I like the best today would be the Blazers team under and Pistons team over. The Heat, even at -4.5, I think aren't a bad bet. The Nets at plus money on the money line. I like the Celtics. It's just such a wide spread. I don't usually bet those, but they should destroy the Thunder. I like the Raptors on the money line at plus money, and I like the Timberwolves on the money line at plus money. Whether you like what I like or fade it, that's great. Hopefully we can all just make each other better as we go here. Some useful information in there. Please do give me a retweet, comment, like. Would love to know what you think, or if there are ways that I can give you information that will help you to be a better as you keep looking at the NBA, which is a little crazy, but I think continues to give us some opportunities. All right. Hope you have a great day, and I will